10,000 feet up in the Italian Alps, a life comes to an end. And a mystery begins. A mystery that will last 5,000 years. Who was this man? How did he die? Today, investigators are giving the world's oldest detective story a brand new plot.
We have found a very new spectacular discovery, and it was very painful for the IceMan.
A series of remarkable new findings that may just revolutionize our understanding of those ancient times. For this is no normal death. This one still haunts scientists 50 centuries later. September 19th, 1991, a remote mountain on the border of Italy and Austria. For nearly 2 million days, the peak has been buried in snow. But this morning, freak weather conditions produce a remarkable thaw, and a corpse appears. Worried that the weather is turning, a local team begins to hack at the ice using ski poles and climbing gear. Slowly, a cadaver emerges. Surrounded by mysterious artifacts, all are rushed to the local police station. Only later does it dawn on them that this is not like other bodies. This strange corpse is one of the most important discoveries of the past century. The oldest human ever found, a man 5,300 years old, with flesh and organs, fingers and toes all intact. He is a specimen unique in the history of science. They will call him Ötzi, the IceMan. Guarded by armed police, he is brought to his new home in 1998, a museum in Bolzano, Italy. Over the past decade, dozens of scientific teams around the world have been investigating this unique mummy. Learning more about his genes and bones, how he lived, what he ate, trying to put a face on him, to understand who he once was. For this IceMan is the first human ever to walk out of the Stone Age and into our own time. The best link we have ever had to the world of our ancestors. Today, his caretaker is Dr. Edward Egarter. As forensic pathologist for the city of Bolzano, Egarter has spent his career unlocking the secrets of the dead. But the IceMan is a figure of special mystery.
This mummy is so special because she is unique in the world.
The mummy is like a man who died 1 or 2 weeks ago.
They've been preserving the IceMan with a special refrigeration system, as cold and moist as the glacier where he was found. Temperature, 21 degrees Fahrenheit. Relative humidity, nearly 100%. If they're taking such good care, there's a reason. Despite a decade of research, the key questions about the mummy have yet to be answered. Who was this man? Where did he come from? And how did he die?
Okay, now we have to change the mummy.
To get some answers, Egarter and an international team of scientists are contemplating a radical step.
To do investigations in the body, you find ice and you can't penetrate with the endoscopes. And so if you need to take samples by the body, it's necessary to defrost him.
To defrost the body, the dangers are immense. If a mistake is made, one of the great discoveries of our time could be irreparably damaged. But the potential rewards are great as well. At a gathering of the Scientific Oversight Committee, a debate begins, led by committee chairman Bruno Hosp. They reach a daring decision. A team of forensic scientists will undertake the defrosting, and Egarter will lead the team.
I am a little bit anxious because it's a little bit dangerous to defrost the mummy.
The day arrives, and museum director Alex Susanna can only stand by and watch as Egarter prepares. Inside an airlocked room, a race against the clock begins. For 5,300 years, this mummy has been an immortal, outside the grasp of time. But now, time prepares to claim him once again. For as the temperature rises, so too does the danger that microorganisms could begin to consume him. Dr. Friedrich Tiefenbrunner is an expert in microorganisms.
The mummy is a big buffet for them. With their enzymes, they could decay the organic material of the mummy and destroy it in that way. And that's what we really fear.
The team will have to move fast.
We have not more than 2 hours. Any more time will be a risk for the mummy.
To extract dental enamel, stomach samples, bone and tissue fragments for chemical analysis. Pieces that will be sent to scientists around the world to confirm their theories. Tiny gifts from the past. How did this IceMan survive so many years? How was he alone so miraculously preserved? When most of us die, our body decomposes. Enzymes and bacteria break down the tissue until only bones remain. Mummies are different. They still have flesh, muscles, sometimes even hair. Most often, we have seen mummies as Egyptian nobles, carefully preserved for the ages by priests. But nature also has the power to mummify. Ice is one of the few forces that can stop decomposition. Ice mummies are extremely rare. Less than a dozen have been discovered in remote corners of the globe. The sailors of the Northwest Passage. The Ampato Maiden of Peru. They show us that in ice, bacteria freeze, decay stops, and the body remains intact in a type of suspended animation. Still, ice crystals can damage the cell walls. But the IceMan is different. Not just older, but truly unique. Because he wasn't just frozen, but freeze-dried, like coffee beans or vegetables. As the snows covered him, the dry, cold alpine winds actually drew the moisture from his corpse, sucking more than 90% of the water right out of his body. in a matter of weeks. The result is a remarkable level of preservation. The liquid gone, but the cell walls intact. Large parts of his body, down to the microscopic level, perfectly preserved. Now, this remarkable specimen is slowly beginning to defrost. The moisture, the smells, all speak of his re-emergence from the land of the dead. Egarter checks the body carefully. The mummy is no longer a solid block of ice. A first sample is taken from his intestines, remnants of what he ate the day he died. It looks like dust, but it may be a crucial clue. The body is now so limp, it takes 3 men to turn him. Testing the flesh, they seem worried, for the temperature is slowly rising and time is short. Inside the defrosting room, the scientists are working faster now. As the temperature rises, they unclench the jaws, get past the tongue itself, and finally take their samples, dental enamel, from deep within the mouth. For Egarter, the key question is the most fundamental. What was the cause of death? How exactly did the Iceman die? Here on the very glacier where Ötzi was found, 2 miles up in the Alps, the weather can change quickly. Storms rush in, disorienting even experienced climbers. In these conditions, it's easy to go astray, and it's not long until hypothermia sets in. Death by freezing. Back in the lab, the Iceman's body does show signs of an elevated temperature at death, a symptom of hypothermia. It also shows signs of fractured bones, possible evidence that the Iceman might have fallen and cracked his ribs, laboring on until he could walk no more. But there are also other clues that don't fit the theory. The Iceman's epidermis is gone, peeled off like a sock, leaving only a supple second layer of skin. His muscles are partially decomposed. His body and hands show signs of wrinkling. Could these be the marks of another kind of death? Tired, disoriented. Could the Iceman have stumbled into a glacial melt pool? Death by drowning. As the oxygen dwindled in his lungs, his nervous system shut down, and darkness came to his brain. Intriguing as they are, each of these scenarios has its flaws. And as the defrosting comes to an end, Egarter remains unconvinced by all of them. On one level, the work has been a success. They have gotten the samples they needed, and just in time. Any more and the body would have begun to decay. And yet they are still no closer to solving the essential mysteries of his death. Egarter decides to take a trip to Innsbruck, Austria, home of the world's largest archive of Iceman images.
Now we want to study the X-ray pictures about the right side of the chest, because in this position there are rib fractures.
At the University of Innsbruck, Professors Zerneden and Seidler examine the X-rays.
Okay. So I think that's a fracture we don't actually know. Was it before death or was it after death because of the ice pressure?
But for a garter, the evidence of the fracture itself is inconclusive. Returning to Bolzano, he decides to take matters into his own hands. Under armed guard, he brings the mummy to make his own X-rays. New images he hopes will tell him more. As the first X-rays emerge, there's bad news. An odd black spot on the chest near the lungs. It might be the first sign of decomposition. Did the defrosting do more damage than they realized? A garter is worried. The next morning, he calls in an eminent local radiologist, Dr. Paul Gossner.
Es ist 7 bis 8 Zentimeter eigentlich.
The black spot turns out to be a false alarm. Focused on the chest, they almost don't notice a strange item in the upper left shoulder. Until Gossner's eye falls on a small, dark object. What is it? It's clearly not a part of the IceMan's anatomy. It must be some kind of foreign object. There's no way to tell for sure from the X-rays. They decide to bring the mummy to the hospital for a more high-tech approach, a CT scan. The trip isn't easy. On the way over, the mummy must be kept on ice the whole time. Inside the CT machine, it's scanned in a series of slices. In all, more than 1,000 pictures. Assembled together in the computer, they can be rendered in 3 dimensions. As Gossner and a garter watch anxiously, the first images take shape. A virtual IceMan. And then, something remarkable emerges in 3 dimensions. And this time, there's no doubt. It's an arrowhead. A flint arrow lodged in Ötzi's back. The hole in the shoulder blade reveals the entry wound. For a garter and Gossner, it's an incredible find. A garter will re-explore an old clue. Examining Ötzi's back the old-fashioned way, with a magnifying glass.
Che stia anche approfondendo dentro vedere su questa.
It's just a tiny incision, but it may hold the key to the mystery.
Questa sembra anche.
Is it the entry wound? And did it heal or not? To inspect it, a garter will perform a mini defrosting. Gently rubbing the wound with his fingers, a garter warms the flesh ever so slightly.
Qui non c'è niente, per qui abbiamo.
Is there a scar or an open gash? Everything rides on this. With a tiny probe, a garter checks. There's no scar. It's the confirmation he was seeking.
This is the proof we are looking for. This is where the arrow went in. The wound never healed.
The IceMan's wound and his death were simultaneous, leaving only one verdict. Cause of death, a shot in the back. After 10 years, the case of Ötzi, the IceMan, the world's oldest detective story, is solved. At least in part. Who can imagine what the last minutes of the Iceman were like? Who can guess what he was reaching for as he stretched out and died, the blood flowing from his wound? Could he or his fellow villagers have known that the frigid temperatures of that peak might preserve his body? Were they offering him a kind of immortality? For in a way, that is what the mountain granted him. A terrible death and a life beyond years. For he survives. Across the centuries, through the ages, he reaches up to us, out of the icy past.